You're listening to Connections Radio, the sound of business. I'm Louisa Wizzi Magnuson with the Business of Financial Freedom with Barney Whiter. Barney is best known as the escape artist, having featured in the press about his FIRE journey. He is featured in the Sunday Times, Mail Online, BBC Radio 4, and the Daily Telegraph, and joins me today to discuss the business of financial freedom. Welcome to Connections Radio, Barney. Is it Barney or Barnaby?
It's actually both. I prefer
Okay,
Barney. My friends call me Barney, and you can call me Barney.
I'll call you Barney, you call me Wizzy. There we go. We'll be
Wizzy.
friendly
All right.
today. Yeah.
Deal. Deal. Deal.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're well.
I'm very well, thank you.
Lovely. Well, could you please start by introducing your FIRE journey? What does FIRE stand for? Because it's an acronym, isn't it?
Yep. FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And so it's just the idea of being able to get to a point where you choose your work, what sort of work you do, have like freedom over your time, how you spend your time, the projects you do, the amount of hours you work, and just have more control over your life.
That's great. So that actually leads me on. My next question was going to be, what does financial freedom actually mean? But you've clarified that very articulately just then. So I kind of thought financial freedom, you had to have a lot of money. Is that not the case? Is it more about your life choices and being able to turn work down, essentially?
Obviously, it helps to have more money. I've never, I've always thought like it's better to have that. It's better to have the stash and better to have the safety net. But the kind of what the financial independence mindset does is it pulls together a number of different threads. So it pulls together the business thread of like either have a good career, a high paying career, or have a business that pays you good money, and it pairs that with the idea of minimalism and not wasting your money, not getting trapped into consumerism, not getting trapped into like status goods, buying stuff that you don't need, brand new cars on finance, and generally kind of keeping up with the Joneses. So
Mm.
so essentially the idea with financial independence is there's kind of four pillars to it. So one it would be earn more, two would be spend less, three would be invest the difference wisely, and then four would be like know how much is enough.
That's really interesting. I like the minimalist approach and not buying what you need because we are bombarded now, and even on social media and stuff, we are bombarded with sponsored adverts, aren't we, for stuff we don't need, and a lot of it's not even good quality stuff. So how do we, as sort of humans, how do we avoid getting sucked into that consumer behavior and the messaging that we get bombarded with on a daily, minute basis of buy this will make you happy? How do we change that
Yeah.
mindset?
Well, the first step is awareness. It's just be aware that you're living in a system that is just trying to beam adverts at you 24/7. And, if you just get off the tube in London and you walk a couple of streets, you'll see 1,000 adverts. You walk past multiple shops. There's 1,000 spending decisions that you have to say no to just to walk down the high street.
Mm.
And so you just have to realize that, the system's kind of set up to take money out of your pocket and put it into the pocket of big companies. And that's fine. I mean, there's a place for big companies in this world, but you have to kind of treat yourself like a business and say, okay, I'm going to be the chief financial officer of my own life. So I'm going to try and get my income up, but I'm going to try and get my expenses down. And so much of the stuff that people spend their money on is just unnecessary rubbish.
Mm.
And I'm all for people like choosing having the freedom. If they want to buy rubbish, that's their choice. That's their free, that's their thing. Great. But just by being aware of what you spend and making conscious, mindful choices, a lot of people can just cut out a lot of the waste. And that way you can get your savings rate up. And one of the sort of underlying pieces of analysis that financial independence tells us is that the amount of time that it takes you to get from being broke to never needing to work again is a function of your percentage savings rate. So I'll give you an example. If you kind of follow the classic thing of saving, let's say 10% of your income, that's fine, that's great. That works for people, but you are going to be working from the age of 21 until you're 67, 71. You know, you're going to be doing 50 years, okay? If you're able to get your saving rate up to a point where you can save half of your post-tax income, which is not easy and it's probably not possible for most people, but I'm just saying it to illustrate them how the maths works, then it takes less than 17 years to go from broke to never needing to work again. So
Wow.
the point is that it's the amount, it's not just the amount that you make in your job or your business. It's kind of the amount that you hang on to and the amount that you put to work and have it growing and compounding and invested for you.
So it's not even about sort of living within your means, is it? It's about extending your means for the future. And whatever you earn, saving, if you could save 20% of that a month, that would be really good and for retirement. And some people, I've recently opened a pension. I feel very grown up, but I should have done that
Okay.
10, 15 years ago when I started
Yes.
working, and I'm
Yes.
watching my pension grow ever so slightly. And at the moment, I'm going to have to work till I'm at least 100, I think, because I've got no pension. But
Well,
building that those finances up for the future and not just because I think quite a lot of people have this attitude of they earn it, so they spend it. And it's kind of like moving house. When you move to a bigger house, you tend to fill it and you move to a smaller house and you empty it out again. And do you know what I'm trying to say? Like whatever you
yeah.
earn, however
Yeah,
big the
yeah.
house is, you find a way to spend it and fill it with your lifestyle and
Yeah.
buying more stuff. And you're talking about really getting out of that mindset. The other thing I find interesting is there's an environmental aspect to this as well, isn't there? With buying
Definitely.
rubbish, as you say, buying
Yeah.
stuff that's not ethically produced is it can
Yeah.
be have very significant consequences for people in different parts of the world and creating so much sort of packaging and cardboard. It's just not good. And we're in a bit of a climate crisis right now. So, is that another thing people could be mindful of that might help them get more into the saving, not spending, and avoiding rubbish purchases mindset?
100%. So the you the phenomenon you were talking about is what I would call lifestyle inflation. So as soon as your salary goes up, what people have this unfortunate habit of doing is just upping their spending to get them to the same point. So they're still broke. They're still broke at the end of the month,
Yeah.
and so you kind of have to turn the whole thing on its head. So if you save what's left at the end of the month and you live in a consumer society, well, that's probably not going to be anything left at the end of the month. So to invert that, you kind of have to say, okay, well, I'm going to pay myself first. So as soon as my pay package comes in, I'm just going to take a chunk of that and put it in my freedom fund, where it's kind of out of harm's way, out of temptation's way, and it's just growing for me in the future. And humans have got this weird ability then to sort of naturally keep one eye on your current account, and you'll naturally tend to spend less to compensate as you go through the month. So the trick really is, hopefully if you're having a good career or your business is growing, you will make more income over time.
Mm.
But if you just like you can earn £1 million a year, if you spend £1 million a year, you've saved nothing, like obviously by
Then
definition.
you
So
might as well have earned £10,000, mightn't
you
you?
might as
Because you're
well,
in the
yeah.
same place at the end of the day. And
That's
does it
exactly,
really make you happy having that much money if it just goes?
yeah. So there's an environmental aspect to it, as you say. I mean, I've my youngest child has just left for university, but like kids' toys, they're just plastic and there's batteries in them. The batteries have got lead and cadmium and nickel in it, and so environmentally, it's not great to be over consuming. It's not great for anyone, and it's just if that is what's trapping you in a job that you don't like, or if that's what's trapping you in debt, well, that's a tragedy in my view.
Yeah. And it needs dealing
So,
with, doesn't it?
so you know, yeah, it needs dealing with it. So people kind of have to educate themselves. People have to like do some thinking about this, do some reading about it, like just figure out what's possible because amazing things are possible if you make a series of small changes.
Mm.
Um, so this kind of every this idea, every little helps. It all adds up. If you just change one thing in your life, okay, that won't go that far. If you just, I don't know, drop down from Heinz baked beans to Sainsbury's baked beans, that'll save you something. But if you did that for everything you bought and you do that, month after month after month, that aggregates and it compounds over time. And most people don't understand how powerful compound growth is, in the stock market, in your retirement saving. So if you imagine a girl who gets a job, say, as a school leaver, 18, and manages to save, let's say they live at home for a bit and they get a job and they can save like £167 a month. And they save £15,000 over 7 years, right? From the age of 18 to 25. So they've got £15,000 saved. If that grows at 10% per annum between the age of 25 and 65, then it will be worth more than £1 million in their pension fund by the time they're 65. So that's the
Wow.
power of that's the power of growth. That's the power of investing. That's the power of like kind of doing it sooner or doing it as soon as you possibly can. Time plus compound interest like creates these amazing results, but you just kind of have to get started as soon as possible. So that £1 million, just to repeat, like that's without having saved another penny after the age 25.
Mm.
So like inflation reduces the value of that. So the £1 million won't be as much worth as much in the future, but it still shows you what's possible.
It's still going to be a significant amount, isn't it? And it is
Exactly.
it is good to plan for the future financially for sure. Let's talk more about you. When did you reach what you consider financial freedom? What age were you?
So I was 43. So that's like coming up for that's 11 years ago now. Seems like a long time ago. I, I got started by accident. I had a sort of childhood that pushed me in the direction of like saving money and being frugal and hanging on to my money and like trying to build some savings. My parents bought the biggest house that they possibly could with the biggest mortgage that they possibly could. Uh, this is like back in the day, and so in 1981, when I was 11, interest rates went to 17%, and
Hmm.
my parents were screwed. Um, Temporarily. They had to cancel the newspaper. They had to like my dad stopped buying beer and he had to brew his own horrible sort of home brew. Didn't go on holiday. Boohoo, poor us. It wasn't the end of the world, but I took from that experience that it was kind of a bad thing to have borrowed too much money from the bank when interest rates go high. And
Mm.
so from that, I kind of picked up on the anxiety that my parents were feeling. And from that point onwards, I'm like, I don't want the bank to be able to take my house away from me. I don't want to end up homeless. And maybe I took that a little far. Maybe I overcompensated, but from that point onwards, I just was super interested in saving, investing, and kind of this idea that if I live modestly and save my money, then I could get to a point where work became optional. And so for me, that was 43.
Hmm. And why is financial freedom important to you? Really, what I want to ask, that's the question I wrote, but I'm going to change that. What has financial freedom done to you as a human, your happiness, your life experience?
Mm. Well, I guess, it started from unhappiness. So it started from that feeling of um, anxiety. It started from that feeling of not being financially secure and the idea that, you could end up homeless. So that's what really put a boot up me and got me on this path. But as I then, so I then made a series of decisions that followed from that. So I did an economics degree because I was interested in money. I wanted to understand how finance worked. And then I trained as an accountant. And then I went and worked in corporate finance in London. And so all of those decisions followed from that fear, that anxiety. And I guess, I ended up making good money working in corporate finance as a sort of qualified accountant. But but that's the thing that stopped me from inflating my lifestyle. So
Mm.
I lived in Battersea. It was a nice area. I was surrounded by sort of lawyers and accountants and well-paid people and bankers. But I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to like buy the flashiest car I could. Like, what's the point if you live in London anyway? You spend most of
Why
the time
would you want
sat
to
in.
drive? Yeah.
You just sat in traffic the whole time. I mean, it was just a nightmare driving anywhere where I lived.
And the nicer the
So it's
car, the more you worry about it as well, don't you? Like if you've got a really flashy
totally,
car, the idea of it getting scratched or stolen is just fills you with anxiety. It's better to have like an okay car that's not going to get nicked. I
yeah.
think.
So it's like the most chilled I've ever been is like in a sort of 10-year-old secondhand Skoda, and I'm like, I just don't care if someone dings me. I just don't care.
And there's a freedom in that as well, isn't there? A freedom in not worrying about your assets and not being in a place where I find like finance, like money, having lots of money would really bother me. I'd be like, should I be solving world hunger? Should I be giving it all to a charity? Should I be? I'd it would fill me anxiety being mega minted. I'm not saying
Okay.
some money wouldn't be nice, but as long as
Yeah.
comfortable, I have a kind of threshold where if I can buy the food I want to buy and I can do what I want to do, I have enough. And
Mm.
I like that. And I do choose when I work. I choose when I don't work. I'm quite lucky. I never considered myself as financially free, but perhaps from talking to you, it's kind of getting that way. Although I don't have
Abs-
a massive pension or anything, which is a bit
Yes.
worrying, but I'm sorting that out now. So before it's too
Yes.
late, before I get too old.
Yeah. 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 Well, good. Firstly, like good for you. And secondly, yeah, a lot of people that are super savers are doing so to get to the point. Often they're doing it to get away from a job that they hate. That they're kind of thinking, oh, if I build up I mean, this is how I originally was thinking. I'm going to build up a redundancy fund, so if I get fired one day, I've got enough. I've got enough runway to retrain or go and do another job or go and do another career or take a lower paid job, um,
Mm,
just to have those choices, just to have those options. But you are right that if you are self-employed, in many ways that's an alternative strategy for achieving a similar thing, which is autonomy and freedom and a
mm,
feeling of being in control of your own life. So, like, the super saving route is one way to get there. The sort of entrepreneurship slash self-employment route is another way to go there,
mm.
and you can combine the strategies.
Yeah, you have to be very self-motivated to be self-employed, I think, is one thing. Like I've worked in corporate a few times. I've never stuck to a corporate role for more than about a year. But I have corporate clients and I've always done better working for myself. I just like to be my own boss. But it's tough, I volunteered on the radio for 9 years before I ever made any money from it.
Wow.
And then I got made redundant from a corporate job in COVID and then got picked up by this station and
Mm,
have been in my sort of dream job scenario since really. So I
mm,
feel very lucky to be where I am. But then it did take a
mm.
lot of grafting, a lot of work. I was up at 4 a.m. to do the breakfast shows for 9 years,
Yes.
so
Yes.
it's about honing your skills and choosing your route. And there's nothing wrong with corporate roles and having a job that's a sort of 9 to 5 and will go on. I think a lot of people are very comfortable in that scenario. But I think what you're saying is if you're not happy in that, you have the power within you to make a change, even if it's little changes. That's what I'm kind of getting from this interview.
Absolutely. So no matter what situation you're in, there's always something that you can do to improve it. That's the sort of growth mindset idea. And if you think in that way, you can kind of get on on the pathway of improving in multiple areas. So, you can kind of cut down your spending. You can um, develop skills at work. You can take on more responsibility at work. You can sit down with your boss and say, what's it going to take for me to get promoted, get to the next level?
Do some training,
None
that
of it
kind of thing.
do train like all of this stuff requires upfront pain for long-term gain.
Mm.
And the whole financial independence thing that is is kind of embracing the idea that over time this will pay off. Um, and then you can make better long-term decisions. Because if so when I'm talking to people about, the idea that, yeah, you can save half your income, it'll take you 17 years to get to financial freedom. Like people will often say, oh, what if you drop dead tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, if you drop dead tomorrow, then you will probably then it's kind of a bummer that you worked hard today, but let's look at the odds, right? Let's look at the odds.
Yeah, look at the
The
other side of
odds
the
are
coin. You might not die tomorrow. It's probably less
you're
likely that's going
you're
to happen.
probably not going to. Let's be optimistic.
Yeah.
86 life expectancy is 86 in the UK. Let's work on the basis that we're in this for the long haul.
Whether we
And
want to be
once
or not.
whether you want to be or not. And so once you kind of think, oh shit, yeah, like we're in this for the long haul, you kind of stop looking for you stop looking for the spending treats, for example, or the health, or the sort of bad health habits that console you for the fact that, yeah, like I'm a little bit unhappy at the moment.
Yeah.
And so a lot of spending is emotionally driven. A lot of like bad food decisions or alcohol decisions, something I know quite a lot about, they're emotionally driven.
It's for instant
And
dopamine hits, isn't it? That kind of thing. It's the same with apps and social media, and those little notifications are designed to give you a little reward, in your
yeah,
brain. It's brain chemistry at the end of the day and neuroscience, yeah.
yeah. So there's a great book called Dopamine Nation, which is essentially saying, yeah, that the world has been engineered for cheap dopamine. The world has been engineered to just allow us to just keep, self-administering these little hits to ourselves, whether it's eating sugar or whatever your vice is. Or look scrolling or shopping, they're all forms of cheap dopamine.
When I think
And
it's perhaps healthier
yeah,
choices is to look for the long-term life satisfaction and contentment, isn't it? I think that's where you're coming from.
definitely, definitely. So you can kind of break down happiness into two separate things. So one is pleasure. So pleasure is what you get when you like sip your margarita. And then there's, as you say, there's long-term satisfaction, and that's like, I don't know, watching your child compete in, their open day or their sports day or something like that. So those are one's very sort of quick, instant, and gone quickly, and then the other one is a sort of slower burn.
Mm.
Um, but I kind of think it makes sense to break down happiness into those two elements.
I think that's a great distinction to make, and the short-term dopamine hits, and then the long-term life satisfaction that we should be looking for instead. And but what do we do about this kind of culture we're in, where it is all about those dopamine hits? How can we challenge that, or maybe just individually for ourselves? How can we try and control our vices?
Well, it's definitely individual. So I, I don't want to be put in charge of, I don't want to be the chief scold, for the world. I work with individuals and I coach, individual people. And every time I'm talking to like a coaching client, I'm thinking, okay, I need to meet this person where they are. Um, I, and I need to kind of help them figure out what is their weakest link. Like what's the one change that would make the most positive, long-term, sustainable impact on their life. And so the answer will be different for everyone. The
Mm.
answer will definitely be, and it will vary across life stages. Um, so you mentioned alcohol. I drank alcohol from the age of 17 to 52, and that worked for me. I got a lot of, I had a lot of sort of fun times, had a lot of headaches and hangovers. Um, but you know, I deemed the benefits to be more than the costs for most of that period. But then eventually there came a point where it flipped and the costs were much greater than the benefits. And
Mm.
so at that point I had to look at myself in the mirror and ask myself some questions about that.
What am I doing and why am I doing it, perhaps?
Yeah, and like, is it worth it? So, I mean, I had a couple of, I had a health scare, and I had I had an endoscopy, and they said, you're at higher risk for cancer. And I said, okay, well, what are the risk factors for that? What are the causes of that? And they said, well, it's various, but it's probably alcohol.
Yeah.
And um, I resisted that for many years. I resisted the sort of idea that it was bad for me. But yeah, there just came a point where for me, I needed to quit. And
Mm.
I tried. I actually, again, a lot of people can do moderation, and good for them. That's fantastic. Personally, if I opened a bottle of wine, I was like, well, we're going to do this properly, right? We're not going to put the cork back in after one glass.
Mm.
And so, some people do moderation well. I wasn't that person.
Okay. It's been really interesting to talk to you today. Barney Whiter, thank you for joining me on the business of financial freedom. Where can we follow your journey online, get in touch for coaching services, and find out more about FIRE?
So I've got a website called The Escape Artist. And the website is www.theescapeartist, or one word, .me. And so that's the best place to go find me.
Fantastic. Well, Barney Whiter, once again, thank you. Really interesting discussion and have a lovely day.
Thank you very much. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
When
happy.
was that live, or do you record?
No,
Is
it's not
that
live.
like
It's
you record it and then you?
pre-recorded. So it will come out on Connections Radio on Thursday, I think. I don't think I've got anyone in the shop on Thursday. So it'll be this Thursday. Yes,